Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to Life of Worship for this part of the Encounter service. And good to see everybody online too, and everybody that's here today. And I hope you're getting blessed today. Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And, I do look forward to the time that we are back in a building, honestly. It'll be a blessing when we're there. And in the meantime, here we are. And so, and by the way, I see right now we've got Linda and Joe and Eddie and Tammy online with us. So Shabbat Shalom and others that are going to be joining us in the archives or joining us here in a little bit. But we're going to jump back over. We were on the Torah portion earlier today. Of course, we do the Torah portion, but I'm going to do a continuation. It's like a part 2 for the Torah portion. We were kind of cut short a little bit because of all the technical issues that we were dealing with earlier. So we're going to pick it up from where we were before. So if you have your notes, you may want to take some notes on this. And so what is the Torah portion this week? We were looking at Tazria and Metzorah. And so if you go to Leviticus chapter 12, that'll be where our base text is coming from. Leviticus chapter 12 through chapter 15. And I'm going to get there. So Tazria talks about the instructions regarding motherhood and purification. And then it goes into the test for leprosy and talks about leprosy and the cleansing and the examination, as well as the going into the leprous house and other type of bodily issues. So it's actually very interesting. If you read it through just from the surface level, you're like, yeah, I don't even know if this even applies to me today, but it does. Absolutely every bit of it applies to us today on a surface level, as well as on a more of a, we can look at it the spiritual level. We can look at it in terms of a prophetic level. We can look at it in so many different dimensions. And so earlier when we were looking at the word Tazria, remember what we had kind of looked at, the definition of that? It's about the covenant as a weapon that comes from the head. It comes from the source that needs to be activated. Yeah, and it requires activation. And so that this covenant that we are under, well, what covenant is that? Well, we've got a lot of covenants, right? We have an Adamic covenant. We have a Noah covenant. We have, I won't say a Noahite covenant. We do not have a Noahite covenant. That is totally rabbinic. But we have a Noah covenant, the covenant of the rainbow. We have an Abrahamic covenant. We have covenants from the mountain with Moses. We have a covenant that with Yeshua. There's probably others that are in there that are interlaced, but nevertheless, here we are about this covenant. The covenant's a weapon that's come from Yeshua. It's come from the source, and we must activate it, because I'll tell you what, a covenant will be in place whether we like it or not. Yeah. But if we don't activate his covenants, guess whose covenant we're under? Mm-hmm. We're under the covenant of the enemy, and the covenant of the enemy, it wants to be active in our life. It wants to be activated. And guess what? By the words of our mouth, we activate that covenant. We can activate that covenant every time we speak, because out of the abundance the mouth speaks. And so therefore, what's in our heart? If it's not the seed of the word coming forth, and then we say, well, this is just my reality, or this is just the reality right now. Wait a minute. Whose report shall we believe? We shall believe the report of Yahweh. Yeah. Isn't that important for us to understand? Yeah. So the covenant is a weapon, and we're either going to use it or we're not. And if we don't, what we don't utilize in it will be used against us. Not by the king. He's good. He's gracious. He's merciful. But by the enemy that will take our ignorance or our rebellion. That's or our desire just as like, well, I'm not in rebellion. I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm just going to do it my way. I'm just going to do it this way. And I'll tell you what, I think there's some things that we need to really do some hard examinations if that's our case. And so the covenant is a weapon that comes from the source, and it's a blessing to be activated in our lives. And so therefore, how do we really get the source of that? And how do we really go to that source? How do we really get that activation? Well, we've got to get to a sterile place.
Yep.
We got to get to a place in the wilderness. We have to go to the places the Torah was given in a sterile place. In the Arava meaning a sterile place, a place in the wilderness. That's where the Torah was given. It was given in a place that was unimpeded or mixed with Egypt or Babylon. And so we talked about that, not in those words, but we did talk about that in the Torah portion earlier. And so that brings us to, honestly, there are barriers. We were talking about Zerah because Tazria, the root of Tazria is the word Zerah. Anybody remember what the word Zerah means? Seed, to scatter the seed, that type of thing. But there's actually some barriers. And one of the things we were talking about, the seed being born and is birthed and it goes through that birth canal. And that is kind of like a barrier. The water breaks and the seed that's been germinated is born. It comes into being fruition. It crosses that fleshly barrier. But a lot of times we have to look at it this way. What about this? Sometimes the seed is within us, but our flesh is what prevents the seed from bearing fruit. And we got to deal with the flesh in order to allow the seed to bear. So if we really want the covenant to be activated in our life, we got to deal with some issues with the flesh. Did you ever think about that? What would keep what causes the flesh not to bear fruit? And that's where it brings in the connection of the leprosy. Because the thing about the leprosy is the enemy has come to kill, steal, and destroy. And leprosy does something. And the symptoms of leprosy, tzara'at, is lesions, discolored hair, spreading sores, and it requires something. It requires a quarantine. So isn't it interesting that, as I had mentioned earlier, about how from the condition of the garden of Adam and Mrs. Adam, that it was from that garden, that we see a leprous condition that came upon the people, upon the descendants of Abraham, Adam and Mrs. Adam. There is this leprous condition. What it meant that they would die.
Yes.
Because leprosy brings death. It brings a horrible scarring. It brings a discomfort, disease, and just a nasty physical being. But it eats away at the flesh, yes. And then ultimately it causes death, right? An accelerated death. So the one is not able to fulfill the purposes for which they're called. But it requires a quarantine. So in a place in the wilderness, isn't it interesting too that they are quarantined from Egypt? They're quarantined from all of the other cultures, and they're in that place in the wilderness by which, therefore, they can be healed. They can be healed from Egypt, because it says in the scriptures that none of the diseases of the Egyptians shall come upon you. But for 40 years, they had to walk through the process. And in that process, there was some things that they had to go through. They had a whole generation died off. Why? Maybe it's because of a leprous condition. Now, we may not be speaking about actual leprosy, but a leprous condition that caused their death. What was that death? What was it tied to? It was tied to their unbelief. Right? And it caused them not to enter into the rest, according to Hebrews chapter 3. And so there is something that's actually very interesting to me as well, because Tzara, it's spelled with the
yes, spell it please.
Tzadeh.
No, that's
Resh. And I'm sorry, let me look at it. It's Tzadeh Resh Ayin. Tzadeh Resh Ayin. I was looking for it in my notes. I just didn't want to mess it up. Tzadeh Resh Ayin. The value of that's 360. So the word Tzara, it has a value of 360. 360. When you think of 360, what do you think of? 3 like a circle, right?
Mhm.
It's a complete circle, right? A wheel, maybe a wheel,
Yes.
but a circle. So so keep that in mind for a second, and remember how there's a little bit of a comparison to the word Sarah. Now Zerah. So Zerah, of course, is with the Zion, Resh, Ayin. Zion. So Sarah and Zerah. Zerah is taking us back to the seed, the scattering of the seed, and all that, right? So, and it had a value of 277. I don't want to lose you in all this, but I do want to bring a connection because Sarah and Zerah are connected, even though they're spelled a little bit differently. There's a connection. 360, whereas Zerah is 277. The difference between those two numbers is 83. Why am I talking about that? Because this links these ideas of the seed that we talked about with the issue of the birthing of the children and the purification process that goes on as well, which is the seed that is born. It takes us to Messiah, Zerah, and this leprosy. There's a connection between the seed and leprosy, but it's not by adding the numbers together, by subtracting one from the other. So subtracting 83 from 360, as we see those words have value, it gives us a value of 360 from 277 gives us a value of 83. And it gives us another word that brings more light into this. And that Hebrew word is peg. P-E-G. You can just, Jackie, spell it P-E-G, peg.
P-E-G.
Peg.
What? P-E-G.
P-E-G, yep. And so it is the Fe or the Pei and the Gimel. And it's Strong's 6290. And the value of that is 83. And it's the Hebrew word for fig. Fig. Whoa. Do you think that now that we've talked about these two different words that are within this Torah portion, and now it has that we have the value of a word, which is fig in English, it takes us back to the garden.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good.
Because it wants to remind us of what Adam and Eve did with the fig leaves. So, because remember, let's go over there to Genesis 3:7. And we'll show that connection. So Genesis 3:7. And Genesis 3:7 is right after Genesis 3:6 for anybody that's having issues today. Okay. So Genesis 3:7 says, then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. Another word for loin coverings, they made themselves girdles. Yeah. Anyway, but
get girded up. Again.
Get girded up. And so this issue, what is the issue of fig leaves then? Is that, and the connection to leprosy, which is a connection to sin. And what is this connection to? It's after touching the wrong tree.
Ooh, that's good.
All right. Well, so they ate of the fruit. Yeah. The process of eating the fruit is you're going to touch the tree. Maybe you got to climb the tree to get the fruit. Maybe you're going to put the fruit of that tree in your mouth. You touch that fruit, right? And so it's created a leprous condition that brought death. That death, by the way, has to go through a process of cleansing. That cleansing goes through a process of examination. That on the third day and on the seventh day, that a person that has leprosy is to be examined by the priest. So let me ask you what happened on the third day. If you look at in terms of the millennial, all the 1,000 years or the 7 days, or what happened with Yeshua on his first coming, it connects us with the third day, right? With the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua on the third day. It also brings us into a connection of the seventh day at the fulfillment of the 7,000 years, another connection to Yeshua. And so we see that a very important link here. Why? because it's at the end of the 7,000 years that we are fully cleansed and purified from this leprous condition that we inherited through our bloodline from Adam. And all from touching the wrong tree. So my question then is, we like to say, well, I want to eat from the tree of life. But a lot of times in our own reasoning, without prayer, we decide to make decisions for ourselves, for our family, for our children, for our futures, all that. And what do? We make decisions out of our own reasoning. Now, I'm not to say that the Father doesn't give us wisdom and has us participate in life with gathering information and consulting different people and pray and doing that as part of our decision making. But if we leave out another little word, that one word of prayer, without his involvement in the middle of it, that perhaps even out of what we feel like, oh, this is the right choice, might be the wrong choice. That we're led by our emotions as opposed to being led by the Spirit. Sometimes I've heard it said that perhaps if we are about to go forward in some type of venture, that it seems so good, everything seems so right. Maybe it's a money investment, maybe it's a business to get into, maybe it's like, this is really exciting, it seems like the right thing, everything's lining up, and we get emotionally tied to that decision. And it was like, I know this is the right thing, and I know it's the right place. Maybe it's the right place to move to. I don't know, whatever it might be. It feels good, so therefore I'm going to do it. And it's the wrong decision. Why? Because the proper amount of prayer was not poured into it. Or shall we might say that we feel so good about it, we're just asking for y'all's blessing upon the decision we're about to make. And which ultimately is saying, I really want to do it my way. And because I've reasoned it out, I feel like it's the best move. We went to the wrong tree. We went to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We thought these things were good. And if we didn't do these things, it would be evil. And we make major decisions in our life, and then we have to pay the consequences for it. And we have to ask the Father, and we confess that we stepped out of his way and did our own thing. But the thing is that here we have a gracious Father that's ready to make things right and to restore and to put the pieces back together after we're broken from it. So here's another interesting, remember what I said in terms of the value of 83, that is the difference between the value of leprosy and the value of seed, or the scattering of seed, which is 83, which is tied to the fig leaves, ties to this whole thing that started in the garden. There's another interesting word that has the same value, 83. It's the Hebrew word is palal, for those that are taking notes. It is the pei lamed lamed, palal. It's Strong 6419, and guess what that word is for? It's the word pray. So the remedy to the fig is pray. And because it has the same value. Isn't it good that we see that the numbers connect us with one thing, but where one thing was where we tried to cover up our mistake, and now we're trying to work through, and we're working through the cover up, and I know I did the right thing, but now I got to fix, there's a bunch of things that are broken about it. Right? And so we're trying to fix all this up. But guess what? There's a remedy, and it's pray. The word palal, to pray, suggesting that pray is the remedy for our missteps. Prayer is the remedy for our mistakes. Prayer is the remedy for our sin. Prayer is the remedy for our leprous actions and lifestyles that we get into, those things that want to literally, I've heard people say I've heard it said, get into extremely stressful situations can turn a person's hair white overnight.
Yep, I believe that.
Right? And as well as all the different other afflictions that come when we're under stress, because when we're under stress, it means we're not under shalom. And when we're not under shalom, then things are broken. Things are missing. We're not living in the abundance. We're living in a place that we need to go and present ourselves before the priest and say, look, I'm broken. I'm oozing. I got sores all over me. So to speak. I have issues that need to be taken care of. And guess what? We've got a king ready to hear our case. And then not only that, to pronounce, to extend a scepter of his mercy towards us, a scepter of his favor. And we need to understand too, it's the enemy that wants us to feel guilty. It's the enemy that wants to prevent us from going boldly before his throne, to lose confidence in going before his throne. And so it's very important that these concepts of his great mercy overcomes the brainwashing of the enemy that says that all the Father wants to do is slap us upside the head and say, well, you deserve it. You deserve. But you know what? Our punishment for ourselves is nothing of what the Father wants to do in our lives. Yeah, we might have consequences for our actions, but it's not because he wanted to put that on it. It's not that he doesn't discipline us in order to bring us back, saying, look, I'm sorry you went through that. Sometimes it feels like a swat, but his desire is, like we as parents want to raise our kids, that when they make a mistake, they might get a whop on the backside. Why? To remind them that they stepped out of the boundaries, out of grace, out of the mercy place, which requires consequences. And so we have to steer them back in, with that loving kindness of even a holy swat on the backside. Okay. So it's kind of interesting too. There's an interesting connection, if you'll go with me. Now that we've talked about the idea of the fig and the fig leaves, as opposed to cover up our mistake, having lost our glorious garment, and now we're trying to scramble for another special covering. But go over with me to Isaiah 53. Now, a lot of times you think Isaiah 53, that's about Yeshua taking those things upon his body, correct? Isaiah 53, and that is verses 4 and 5, Isaiah 53 verses 4 and 5, where it reads, surely our griefs he himself bore. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, and here's the key word, smitten of Yah, or smitten of El, or Elohim, and afflicted. He was smitten. That word smitten, by the way, do you ever use that word?
Mine says stricken.
Stricken. That's another way to say it. It's typically not a word we use in everyday English language.
Yeah.
I've been smitten with love.
That's what you usually say.
Yeah, right? Okay.
He smoked me.
Yeah. It also means struck down. It means struck down.
Yes.
So there's an interesting connection, though. It says, so he was smitten of Elohim and afflicted. Smitten. That word, Messiah being smitten, the word is naga. Naga. It's from Strong's 5060, naga. And it's related to leprosy. Well, how's it related? Because Strong's 5061 is the word nega. And that word means plague, disease, or mark, as in terms of a mark of leprosy. So Yeshua was smitten, and what was he? He was struck down with, shall we say, a mark that's related to leprosy? Well, what's the leprous condition? That's why I'm saying that the leprous condition takes us back to the garden. It takes us back to the fall, where they had to cover themselves with the peg, with the fig leaves. And yet they, even Adam and Mrs. Adam, found redemption through prayer.
Yes.
Through prayer.
Yes.
I believe that they did. And so naga, they're related. It's related to leprosy. Speaking about Messiah smitten for humanity's sin, healing the plague that that comes to kill, steal, and destroy our bodies, our lives. It's more than our bodies. It's our lives, everything about our lives, from our families and where we live and our finances and all of those. Yeah, all of that.
A lot of things. Yeah.
So nega. And so it also connects us with something that's very interesting as well, that it lets us know that there's this leprous condition that ultimately reveals itself. If you'll look with me over in Revelation 16, verse 2, Revelation 16, verse 2, this leprous condition, there are people, there are leper colonies. I think there's still people that are dealing with leprosy. If you get bitten by an armadillo, get around an armadillo, they carry leprosy in their bodies.
Yes.
You can get it. So if you run over an armadillo out here in West Texas, don't go and pick it up. Okay. Just stay far away from it. Okay. Just saying. But Revelation 16:2, but that's actually, that's talking about the disease aspect of it. But Revelation 16:2, isn't it interesting? And this is about the 6 bowls, and verse 2. And the first angel went and poured out his bowl into the earth, and it became a loathsome and malignant sore upon the men who had the mark of the beast and who worshipped his image. So what is the mark? What does the mark of the beast do? The mark of the beast actually shows one's reliance on the beast system or on a anti-Messiah system, as opposed to one who relies on the Messiah system. It's two different systems, an anti-Messiah system or a Messiah system. And one will, in the outpouring of this bowl, brings forth that which is being held back in our bodies.
Yeah, that's good. Yes.
So leprosy is a condition that is waiting to spring forth and be released for all to see. Isn't that interesting? And because ultimately, what is the ultimate destiny of one who aligns himself with the beast system? The one who takes the mark. The mark is, as we saw in the word nega, is the word meaning plague, disease, and mark, or mark of leprosy. But the mark, it's the same word over in this case in the Greek. I would like to go into the Hebrew version of Revelation and actually see what the Hebrew word that's used. In the Cochin version. I'm going to get there. I'll get there one of these days. So the sores on the followers of the beast mirror leprosy. Why? Why would someone take the beast? Why would someone take the mark? Self-preservation. How about this? What was it that brought it on Adam and Mrs. Adam? Not saying that they had physical leprosy, but we see that their outcome was leprosy that causes a 7,000 years cleansing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's judging the false seed. Judging the false seed. In other words, they judged in the garden that perhaps they would be able to see things, like perceive things. They would know things like Yah knows things. And so the connecting with the beast system would perhaps people wanting to take the mark is because maybe when they connect to that supercomputer system, that they will have knowledge above their own knowledge. Maybe they'll be wired into that Internet of Things, where they will be able to connect immediately with the same things that we have to type in when we go to our search engine and try to learn things. Well, all they have to do is think it, and they'll connect to the greater artificial intelligence system. Yeah. So judging the false seed, saying that, oh, this is the answer. This is what I've been missing. This makes me almost supernatural. It'll make me like God.
Yep.
And
that's
so-
when it's gonna come down on them.
so as Adam and Mrs. Adam brought a period of 7 days or 7,000 years for the cleansing and the purification of humanity, so the beast system once again brings people through a process that instead of a death system, we see it's born on the bodies of those who follow the beast.
Hope that's clean enough, I think it is. Yeah.
So now in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the community rule, in 1 QS 3 verses 4 through 6, in the community rule, it actually takes that word za'arat, which is leprosy, and it brings the connection of the moral connotations of leprosy. That leprosy, though it is an affliction, it connects it to one's moral decisions. Well, what is ultimately the correct moral decisions in our life? Moral decisions are more than just don't steal, don't kill, don't commit adultery, all that sort of thing. Those the connotations connected to leprosy are connected to life and death.
That's true.
And so that's what the community rule is trying to say. It is equating impurity with rebellion.
Mhm.
Of course, the rabbis connect tza'arat to slander or lashon hara, but they also bring in the connection of the 360. Is that it also tells us about this the pervasiveness of sin requires complete repentance. So we often talk about this idea of teshuvah, is that we turn 180 degrees from where we were to look back into the face of the Father, right? Because there's not a 90 degree facing from the Father. There's no sitting on the fence. There is either we're facing away or we're facing towards. Yet what happens in the cycle of sin, there's this, we turn away, which we turn back to that 360 degrees, that where there's a fall, there's a repentance and a redemption process. So that's where we get that 360 that tells us that there's always a way back.
Yes,
There's always a way back.
unless you do that on one particular.
Yeah. And so in the word, now let's bring in another idea of the concept of these Hebrew words. So we've been talking about za'arat, we've been talking about zerah, but what about the word? So that this Torah portion is Tazria and Metzorah. Metzorah, it throws a mem at the beginning, and which talks about, it's symbolizing, therefore, because Metzorah meaning leper, it adds the mem at the beginning. Well, what is in the paleo? What is the picture of the mem? What is the mem? The water, right? The waters. It also speaks for blood. It also speaks about chaos, that our lives are full of chaos.
Yeah.
But the positive side of the water is the washing. And so it's a cleansing agent. So in the cleansing agent, we choose to judge ourselves, or if we don't choose to cleanse ourselves, what happens? We face judgment. We will face his judgment, which so we either want to cleanse ourselves, judge ourselves, or be judged. And if we are judged, it's because we were eating of the wrong tree. And we go back into that whole idea of the concept of eating from the wrong tree, suggesting that we are following the beast system.
Yes, got to work at it.
Yeah.
It'll work
So 70, those 7 days of quarantine, representing the completion represents completion, but it also represents divine examination. Did you think that all of humanity is under divine examination right now?
Yeah.
But ultimately, the idea of on the seventh day or the seventh millennial or the millennial reign of Yeshua the Messiah, did you ever just think that is also a part, the final day of cleansing and purification? And Yeshua tells it this way, is that in John 3:5, saying that we are born of water and spirit.
Yes, body, soul, spirit.
So this again, it's speaking about the leper's cleansing, which takes the water of the purification and the blood that comes from the is it the dove? And
Yes.
And though to bring the cleansing, the blood and the water. And why? Because it is not just a physical process through the examination. It is a very much a spiritual process and a connection right there. And so, but I want to bring up another point though, because in this Torah portion, it talks about the leprosy of the house. And so she got a little rug burn there on the back. So what about the purification of the house? Or shall we say this? The purification of the houses. We have two houses of Israel. We have a southern kingdom and a northern kingdom. And so therefore, this idea of the purification of the houses is, it requires an examination. It requires a cleansing. And if the cleansing doesn't take place, guess what happens to the house? Those bricks, those stones in the wall that will not be healed from the leprosy, from the mold that's in there. What do? They break them out of the wall and they remove them to an unclean place. Mm-hmm. And then the wall is rebuilt with stones that do not have the mold. They're not leprous. What is it that the Father is doing with the two houses? There's the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. We are, because if we're likened unto living stones, and these living stones are building together a house that he is supposed to reside in, if one of the stones will not be healed, will not be cleansed, and goes through the examination process of how many days? 7 days. Then that stone is removed to a dry and barren place, to a place that's separated from the rest of the house. And so we have some other connections here, because on the 8th day, after the 7th day, and it's not healed, the stones are removed. And what takes place? There's a new beginning in the house. A new wall is built. And it's also representing an eternity. So what is it on the 8th day after the millennial reign of Yeshua the Messiah? And it comes up to the 8th day. It says that we have a new heaven and a new earth. That's right. And so, again, what do we have? We have a picture of a new house that's being built. We might even say the new Jerusalem that comes down from heaven, right? And that Yahweh is the light with the sun, and that there's no need for a sun and a moon. That they are the light that fills everything. And what happens to us? Well, we're light because we are joined together with him. We become as one with him. So this whole idea of this, that Za'arat is the concern of Za'arat. The concern of leprosy is that it's contagious. That's why you separate the people outside the camp.
Yes, set apart.
You put them into a sterile place where they're not going to be contaminating anything. You remove those bricks from the wall so it won't contaminate the rest of the house. If you're eating in a house that has this moldy condition, that you're supposed to remove your clothes and wash them. What was it about Israel when they came out of Egypt? What did they do? They washed their clothes because they didn't want to have that. Why? Because the living stones came together in the wilderness. They had to be cleansed. They had to be separated. And a leprous condition cannot come into the presence of Yah. So when Yah comes down on the mountain, that they wouldn't die.
They did because they didn't pay attention.
So the living waters that come and do the washing and the cleansing and the purification. Here's an idea that in Psalm 51:5, this is an interesting connection as well. Psalm 51:5, if you want to go there with me real quick, we'll wrap it up here shortly. Psalm 51. I'm trying to hold my finger in places, but I don't lose them. Oh well. Okay. Psalm 51, verse 5. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. So what does that mean? What's it telling us is that there's this process from the garden. And so doesn't it tell us, doesn't it give us a picture about this separation process, the 33 days, the 66 days, and not that there's anything wrong giving birth, but is a representation of renewal so that the mother is prepared to do it again. In terms of a girl being born, that the representation that this girl is a representation of the life beyond the mother that she will also produce. And so is that multiple layers that we need to see connected as well. And then we have the okay, I'm just looking at to see how I'm going to just wrap it up here without going and starting up a whole nother type of subject. But ultimately, here's an idea that's in the War Scroll and the Hymn Scroll, because in this whole idea of the cleansing and the purification of and process, this purification from the Metzora, is that it.
What's the Metzora?
The Metzora, the leprosy.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, this whole idea is it anticipates. They talk about in the War Scrolls and the Hymn Scrolls about this anticipation of a purified remnant. And so, yeah, in the Second Temple period, that's what they were looking. They could see the condition of the people, and these are the people that are living in the Promised Land. This is the people that came back from Babylon, and yet they're saying we need to be elevated to a new condition. This process, we need Messiah to come. And well, yeah, there was one other point. Where did I wanted to bring out, and it speaks about.
They just couldn't get Egypt out of them. It amazes me.
The concept that there's an idea that lies with, here it is, in the purification of the houses, that in Leviticus chapter 14 verse 10. Leviticus chapter 14 verse 10. Now this isn't talking about the house, but it can be connected to the house, because the connection to the person and to the house is very similar. Would you agree with me on that? Okay. So go back to Leviticus chapter 14. And of course, this is in the area talking about the cleansing of the leper. In verse 10, it says, now on the 8th day, he is to take 2 male lambs without defect, and a yearling ewe lamb without defect. And it goes on, in 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. So I thought that was kind of, did you think about this? Why is it 2 male lambs without defect and a yearling ewe lamb? Well, what's a ewe? Well, it's a female lamb. So it hit me when I was studying this out,
Like
is that the 2 male lambs, could we be not, we're not talking about 2 messiahs.
No.
We're talking about Messiah coming the first time and the second time to cleanse of leprosy.
Yeah.
The third day and the 7th day.
Yeah.
Well, what about the ewe? Well, on the ewe that's presented on the 8th day is after the cleansing of the 7 days. The you that's been cleansed, the you that's being represented here is the bride that's been cleansed.
Hallelujah.
So the Messiah who comes not once, but twice, comes the first time, comes the second time, and then with the you on the last day, on the 8th day, presented with the two, saying, look, the bride has made herself ready. The bride and the lamb are married. And so we get that picture over in the book of Revelation. Let me see if we can go there real quick. We're going to look it up and we're going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up with this. Yeah, Bo Yeshua Bo, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, and chapter 18, verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you may not participate in her sins, that you may not perceive of her plagues. Well, there we go. There's the leprous connection. For her sins, her plagues, for her sins have piled up as high as heaven, and Yah has remembered her iniquities. There's that connection there. But let's go over to in chapter 21 of book of Revelation. And I saw, verse 1, and I saw a new heaven and new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there's no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from Yah, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. There's that you. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of Yah is among men, and he shall dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and Yah himself shall be among them. So there we go. And that is, I think, is a good wrap up for this whole idea. This is where the house is healed. This is where, so think about this. There's the individual is healed and the house is healed, and they all come together, and we see this. And why? And then we have the presentation of the 2 male lambs and the female lamb, and all of it representing this significant 8th day sacrifice, which is presented here, that has yet to be fulfilled, and we shall see it fulfilled. Yes. And so anyway, I hope you got something out of that. I think this is anyway, I hope that's something you can chew on. I hope you got something out of it. And thank you, everybody that's been joining us here live online, and those that are in the archives as well. I hope that's been a blessing to you. I do want to just say, if anybody is able to do that and willing, that you can send your offering and donations to Life of Worship, Amarillo.org. Just click or tap the donate button. I've got it there on the screen for you. This ministry is supported by your love gifts and your offerings and your tithes, and we are putting together the funds. We're doing our best. It's just trickling in very slowly. Like, share, subscribe. Let other people know. Let's grow our family online as well as locally. And because we want to be able to reach the nations, and your help helps us do that. And so during this counting of the Omer, we're heading towards Shavuot. So y'all be blessed. And until next time, Shabbat Shalom.
Yes.